Welcome to the Miss Dean Loves You podcast. That's not what it's called. Welcome to the Unbranded podcast with Miss Dean Loves You. I'm your host, Susie Dean. I am joined by one of my dearest friends, Jaci Gennaro. Hi, Jaci.
Hi, Susie.
Jaci is a friend of mine who I met while I was a teacher. We were both teachers together, but I want Jaci to take it away and tell me who you are, what your identifiers are, how do you talk about yourself, profession, where your identity is, how we met. Give me all of it.
Oh boy, loaded question.
I know, sorry.
Yeah.
I lost out for a second.
Gosh, I guess my identity is, well, I'm Jack. I mean, for purposes of like where we are, Jaci, she, her.
Okay.
And, it's weird because my life shifted when I was 23, when I had my first baby. So I almost never really had an identity, I feel like. Like I went from like being this young kind of party girl. I guess that's how I would identify myself before Kennedy. And then went into the identity of mom, teacher. And I feel like right now I'm 36. Oh my God, I'm 36. I'm going to be 37 in May. I feel like I'm just kind of coming into my identity as like a woman in a sense, like
Ooh.
the type of woman that I feel like I'm becoming. And I think the more that I practice my yoga and that I experience life, I think the only fair identity for any of us is just like human, like as mistakes are made and lessons are learned and things are kind of figured out and answered. It's like, oh, yep, there's my humanity again. So there was never this moment where like I felt like I was a normal adult.
Okay. And it totally checks out that you said you're starting to find your identity as a woman now. I hear that so often, that your 30s are just, everyone tells me that your 30s are the best. And everyone who I talk to that I press in and I ask why, almost always the answer is some variation of, I don't have the same insecurities that I used to. I feel so much more comfortable and confident in my body, in my life, in my power, in my assertiveness. Do you feel that way as well? Or do you think maybe this is the time because like things are slowing down in terms of chaos?
No, oh my gosh, I don't know. Let me think. Things are definitely not slowing down in terms of chaos. I think that I thrive in chaos.
Okay, that was going to be my next question.
I've been like kind of understanding that, like even looking back at my childhood, I think I'm comfortable sometimes in chaos. And I think that's why the yoga practice for me has really helped me learn that there's another way to live. Like there is another side. There's the yin to that yang, or the yang to the yin. So, no, chaos is here to stay. That's a lesson that I learned. I actually teach that a lot in my yoga classes. Like I teach my students to find calm and breath in the chaos of the pose, because that's really what our life is.
Yeah.
So chaos, check, here to stay. And then the other part of that question was, do I feel like because I'm more confident or comfortable? I've been learning about myself that the patterns that used to show up still show up. And so patterns of insecurity, patterns of neediness. And I think that what's changed for me is, instead of seeking an external like answer or solution, I just know that it's a part of who I am, like a part of my humanity. And so I think it's not that that stuff, for me at least, talking from my own experience where I'm at right now, it's not that my insecurities have gone away or things like it's just that I've become more comfortable and I've learned how to make friends with my insecurities.
Would you say that this is a time in your life where you're um seeking truth within your highest self. Does that make sense? That sounded so esoteric, but like, I read a lot of books and I hear a lot of people talk about how the essence of life, all the answers, all of our wisdom is inside, is in the self. But because of the world and all of this external chaos, we lose touch with the self, which I definitely know that you know what I'm talking about. Would you say this is a time where you're kind of learning to lean into that and make a relationship with that?
It's interesting. Yes. And it's just like where I'm at right now, and I don't know if that will change. I have a love-hate with that type of like idea of thinking
Ooh,
because
okay.
the reality is that we are in this fucked up world
Yeah.
and we are experiencing things that take us out of that. I don't know if it's in Zen or this higher self. I don't know. I'm just not there yet.
Okay.
Like there's moments on my mat maybe that I'm like in a sound bowl meditation where I'm like, I don't know, where you feel I'm not there yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I'm not. I love the idea of it. I don't know if it's possible without substance.
I want to try mushrooms so bad, but then I
No.
got pregnant.
Well, it's never too late.
I know. I know. I got to talk Robbie into like not freaking out if I choose to do it.
Yeah, you'll be fine. Just
But I like what do you mean like make friends with your insecurities?
yeah. Okay. So you'll love this, and you probably know this. So when I used to teach in the school, I had my high school seniors who I loved so much. Like, I'll cry thinking about them. And right, like remember like right before COVID, like we like loved our kids so much.
I was obsessed with my graduating class that I had the COVID, like right when we left for COVID.
Oh,
I taught them
oh,
when they
you
were
had
sophomores. Oh, and then you had a lot of the same ones. We had a lot of overlap.
oh, I love some of those kids. I'm so bummed that it ended like that.
I
But
know.
yeah, so on their last day, I used to print them out these John Mayer lyrics. And I know I'm still on my John, I'll never be out of my John Mayer stage.
Yeah.
And so there's this one line. It's called The Age of Worry. It's just such a beautiful song for like it's a beautiful song for anyone, but especially like a high school senior. And in this one part, he uses the line, make friends with what you are. And since I started my yoga work, it was rooted in anti-racism, shadow
Mhm.
work. It was kind of like dark yoga in a sense. Like it was
Yeah.
like it wasn't like you're like, oh, rainbows and butterflies yoga. It was like, no, like we need to use our yoga for activism and like understanding our shadow. And so when I first started doing shadow work, I used to think that it was like, oh, I need to rid myself of my fear, or I need to rid myself of my shame, or my grief, or my lies, or my this, whatever the shadow is. And the truth is that for me, at least where I am right now, and I keep saying that because I know it's different for everyone and I know it will be different for me one day. Um, Instead of this obsession of trying to like get rid of it, I've decided it's not going anywhere and I need to make friends with it. Like accept it. Like when it shows up, nurture it.
Mhm.
When it shows up, like nurture it, you know?
That's like the essence of mindfulness, right? Like we feel the feelings because they want to be felt. We don't try to avoid, well, you shouldn't try to avoid the feelings of anxiety or depression or just ickiness. You welcome it, stand alongside it, feel it, and
You
then
make
like
friends who
integrate it.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
For those that are listening that might not be into yoga, like physically into the world of yoga, or are but just view it or know it as the asanas and the poses, it might be a little bit confusing when they hear you say we need to use our yoga for activism. So, can you define what yoga is outside of just physical poses and how we can use that for activism?
Yeah. So yoga means union. And when we are in yoga, there is no separation. It's union. And so when we have separation all over our lives. We have separation in our government. We have separation in it shows up everywhere. You know, I'm a history teacher too. So when you study American history and you look at what has separated us politically, economically, racially, it's literally everything that yoga is not. So the way we've separated our, does that make sense what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like how we've separated ourselves into rich and poor, white and
Yeah.
black, whatever it is, skilled or unskilled, whatever you can think of as opposite forces, the yoga brings them together. And so when I say yoga for activism, it's rooted, first of all, and then another thing is that the number one principle of yoga is called ahimsa,
Mm-hmm.
and it means non-harming to others and to yourself. So this is why a lot of yogis are vegans, because they take that to also not eating meat and whatnot. So between union, ahimsa, and then universal truth, which is also a part of yoga, um, how dare we practice yoga and not actually try to at least speak out for the things that are separating us?
I don't want to really put you on the spot with this question. So if it's like too hard to answer or too heavy, I can just cut it out. Let me figure out how to phrase this. How do you think we can, one, logistically use yoga as activism how do you think we can logistically use yoga and union as activism while at the same time being sure to not tolerate things like racism and sexism and misogyny and classism and ableism and all of those things? How can we logistically make union without making judgment? Does that make sense?
Well, let me see. Let me also go back on that. Like there are some yogis that I have studied from and that are my teachers that are
Mm-hmm.
literally on front lines of activism. So they are like the type of activist that we kind of understand as like that term. I am not an activist like that. Like I'm just not. That's not my role. Like I showed up with my activism from understanding the principles of yoga through the classroom, right? Like through my service as a teacher. That was like a way that I did. Now that I'm out of the classroom, honestly feel like I've fallen off a little bit. I'll be honest. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm in this point, I think, where I went so hard on that realm of yoga. That once COVID hit and I felt like I really needed to take care of myself and my family, just like my survival needs in a sense, I kind of backed off of that. But I will say this, that one thing that never stops is the idea that if there is separation in ourselves, we can't even start to get on the front lines or make any sense in the classroom or change policies at work, whatever, however our activism shows up. So the yoga, there is that physical realm, like the asana, the poses that we practice, that does bring us into things like it does bring our body into union. It brings our breath and our spirit into union with our body. So when we can start to actually understand and feel the union within, or that truth within, or ahimsa within, there's a trickle effect out. So in yoga and activism, there's actually a lot of self work that it requires. Instead of going out there and being like, you're this and you're that and I'm a yogi and I'm perfect. Like that is so not what we want to do, right? So it's more like just being able to see that shit in ourselves, that like, okay, here's a perfect example that one of my teachers always uses.
Okay.
So we're in traffic and we're like, oh my God, I hate the traffic. Like I have road rage. I hate the traffic. And one of my teachers, one time, she looks at me and she's like, Jackie, you are the traffic, you know? And I'm like, motherfucker, you know? So it's like, any way that you're creating separation, I am probably creating that separation in my own life as well. Like that's the whole thing about like making friends with what you are. When you can make friends with what you are, I can make friends with what you are.
Okay. I think it's important to also add here that you don't need to get to a perfect state of union within yourself before you can begin activism, because we're never going to reach that point, right?
No.
We're never going to reach that.
Yeah, there's moments.
Simultaneous.
Yeah. There's moments on the mat where I'm like, oh my God, I feel it, right? There's moments as a parent where I'm like, oh my God, I nailed that. As a teacher, right? Where you feel like you're in that union. But then, you know, while I'm nailing something, one of my other kids drops a glass everywhere. And now there's shattered glass all over the floor. And I'm like, well, there goes that piece. You know, and that's like a stupid example. That's a stupid example. But yeah, there's always something, at least in my experience, that's going to try to take that union or truth or ahimsa and test me.
So almost there are two things that have to coexist, the activism and the self-work, and they'll both reinforce each other. The self-work will help us, or the activism will help us see where our shortcomings are internally, which then allows us to internally work on those things and then be more in union with the other people and individuals and systems around us, right?
Yeah, one doesn't have to come before the other. They can coexist. Yeah, because it's all lifelong work.
So pivoting a little bit, I want to talk about you and teaching, and I want to talk about well, I would like to just get out of the way how we know each other, how you remember meeting me. I don't know if we have the same story.
I feel like we don't, because my memory is just so bad.
Okay, so the school that we taught at, I went to as a student, and Jaci taught one of her classes in addition to history was Holocaust. And it was really badass that our school offered a Holocaust class, and our district has a Holocaust curriculum. The teacher that I had, a Holocaust teacher that was not Miss G, not Jaci, and who left, and Jaci filled her role. And so I remember I was now a teacher, and I was taking my students to a poetry slam that you performed at.
That was your first year?
I think it might have been my second, but I didn't know you were performing, and I was walking my kids into the theater and you were holding the door, and I had been watching you from afar and heard about you, and people would like say that we were very similar a lot, like my students, in terms of classroom personality. And I saw you and I knew you were the Holocaust teacher. I was like, hi, I'm Susie Dean. I actually used to take Holocaust with Miss K. Do you know who she is? And then you were so awesome and so welcoming and so like nice and fun and bubbly. And then I just like went into the theater and watched you do your poetry slam. And then I feel like our relationship was really solidified the year after, or the 2 years after, when we were in similar hallways, and every morning you would come into the teacher planning room and just talk shit with all the male teachers in there, which just lifted me up every day. I didn't have a first period, so I could just what?
Like talk shit to them.
Yeah, at them, to them, with them. It was awesome. The energy in that room was awesome, and I just sat back and enjoyed all of it, enjoyed watching all of it, enjoyed watching your fire and the way that you handled yourself and like worked with different types of people. It was, yeah, and that's when I really fell in love with Jaci.
Oh, I love that. So I'm so happy that I was welcoming and nice because sometimes I could just be such a bitch too. Like it just depends on where I'm coming from. Like, the classroom. So that makes me happy. I loved that poetry slam. That was one of my favorite experiences. Um, the the poetry rumble, the slam poem.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So my I don't remember that actually. I don't remember that interaction. I was probably so nervous because I was about to go do
Really? You
that
did
poem.
not act like it.
I was a
I'm
little nervous.
impressed.
Thank you. But I do remember us in the planning room, and you were always so freaking cute with your backpack and your shells, and like oh, okay. So I think, tell me, there was one year where Kennedy, my oldest daughter, wanted to be a Visco girl for Halloween.
Oh,
Remember this?
vaguely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's a Visco girl? And someone was like, Miss Dean is a Visco girl with the shells and the whatever water
All the
bottle.
bracelets.
Yeah, the bracelets and everything. And yeah, I sometimes I felt bad. Like sometimes I felt like I hijacked your morning
Oh
because
no.
okay, because you would be in there like trying to work and I would come in there just like
I'm
guns.
blazing.
Yeah.
No, I didn't have a first period. So like all first period was silent. Nobody was in there. So I could just like hang out right before
Yeah,
school.
and you always had your coffees, like multiple coffees.
It's always funny to hear other people's interpretation of like your existence.
Yeah. And I know exactly what you're talking about with talking shit to those male teachers. And yeah, that fired me up, man.
I
You
loved watching it because I would never. I mean, I think it's different because you're a history teacher, so you had to be in the news every day in order to effectively teach the past. And I wasn't as much. I have rarely been in a place where I feel so confident to speak on current events and challenge people and be challenged. And so it was always something that I've wanted to embody. So it was really inspiring to watch you. And also there were times where you might have you like maybe came back and apologized or apologized in the moment if you got like way too fired up. So there was so much learning that I gained
oh,
just from watching you in that.
yeah. Oh God. I'm like talking about that. Like, notice how talking about the kids makes me want to cry. Like the
Yeah.
seniors, that I miss. But like those interactions with some of those other teachers, I don't miss.
I don't blame you. I mean, it really if talk about an opportunity to practice your yoga and your
Yeah,
internal
I
growth.
failed 90% of the time.
Well, it like at least pointed you in the direction of where you needed to work.
Exactly. Yeah. And I would probably still fail. I try my best. Like when I'm in moments like that of chaos, I really do try to practice what I preach. And that shit is not easy,
No.
just like it's not easy in the pose.
Yeah, I don't know where this came up or when I started thinking about this. I think I might have been in a yoga class. I was in a yoga class with someone who was apologizing for the construction noise outside. And I said, it might have been like a new teacher or maybe I was talking about it with a friend, but I said, there's no need to apologize because that external distraction just allows me to better challenge myself or better learn how to quiet my mind in my shavasana meditation.
Right. And yeah, exactly. It's like the perfect epitome of like the chaos isn't going away,
Right.
and those guys are out there working. And it's like one of my teachers always says that like we can't be mad that they're working. Like they're making a living to put dinner on their kids' tables and like you know what I mean? Like we can't be like, sorry, we're in a yoga class right now, like
Yeah.
stop your construction work. Like
Right. No, it's the ultimate opportunity to practice how to maintain yourself within situations that you can't control and therefore putting you in a position to be more at one with yourself in moments that otherwise would get you incredibly rattled and overwhelmed. So, why did you can you explain a little bit more of why you left teaching? Because I know, and it sounds like it wasn't just working through COVID.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I actually considered leaving the classroom when Parkland happened. I was like done. I was disgusted and I was in fear.
Yeah.
And I teach the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was like enough reason for a kid to be pissed off or something. I don't know. I kind of
Yeah.
spiraled out of Parkland big time.
And before you go on, I think it's important to note that Parkland was very, very, very close to our school. A lot of our students knew Nicholas Cruz. A lot of our students, I know that I had students who they were texting during the shooting at Douglas. So it was all very, very close to home.
Yeah. We had students, a lot of Boca High students actually. I don't know how many. I don't want to say a lot, but I know of a few that they didn't want to go back to Parkland. So they actually transferred to Boca.
Yes.
How they were able to do that, I don't know, in different districts, but I know that there were some. You know, it was like an identical school almost to Parkland. It's like if it could happen in Parkland, it could happen.
That made it even scarier.
So there's a lot with that too. Anyways, so that was like one of my first things. And then I realized that I started getting subs every Friday. Okay.
What?
I started getting substitutes like almost every Friday.
Like you personally, you were just not coming to school on Fridays?
Right.
Okay. Nice.
Okay. And I started because my yoga teacher would do something called a Friday trifecta. And so she would have an 11 o'clock vinyasa, a 12 o'clock sound bowl meditation, and a 1:15 lunch and learn, which is like a book club. And I was like addicted to it. And then I started realizing that not only was I wearing, once I stopped coming to school on Fridays, I started wearing my yoga pants to school on Thursdays. And then I started realizing, oh shit, I came in yoga pants on Monday. I'm like, they say dress for the job you want.
Oh.
So I'm like, something is happening here. Like I am just like the profession. I was never the most professional teacher, and I'm fine with that. Like it was always about the kids for me. I could care less about putting on a show for evaluations. I could care less about dressing the part.
Yeah.
I always admired you though. You always looked so freaking cute. I'm just not that like it just.
Oh, but at the same time, while I was like put together, I was wearing like hippie as shit clothes. I wasn't.
Yeah, you were like could have been a kid for
Yeah.
sure. Like yeah, definitely not like the most professional either, as far as dress code is concerned. But I just felt like, I don't know, I was losing a little bit of whatever filter I had left. I just knew that it was time. And I was at that point like doing a disservice to the kids. I felt like the golden age at Boca High kind of came to an end, and I could feel it. And I knew that I didn't want to make a lateral move. I knew that I wasn't going to leave Boca High, Spanish River, go to another high school. It was like, get the job at FLVS, give myself time to really dive deep into my yoga practice. And that's what I did. And I applied 5 times to FLVS.
5
times. Yeah. I applied the first time. I probably could have gotten the job.
I vaguely remember this. You coming in every day, and I would check your status, and it was still a little bit hush hush.
Yeah. And that first time I didn't get it was because I messed up like a number, like my employee number. I know. I was like, but it all worked out because I ended up getting the AP job, and now I teach AP US History for FLVS.
There was something else I wanted to ask, but it'll come back to me. What has been your, this is something I really admire this about you as well. I am just such a high-strung person, especially when I was at school and as a teacher. I would get so worked up for the whole day over the smallest thing that either I did or an email from admin or a parent. And I also would drastically overthink taking any of my sick days or personal days for anything. I don't think for the first 3 years I took a single personal day. I think I might have taken 3 total sick days when I was very, very, very sick. So I always also really like spending time with you because you reminded me that school isn't my identity and it's not more important than my personal health and my familial health. So when you say that every Friday, I mean, just the thought, if I knew that's why you weren't coming to school on Fridays, like Jackie's just calling out of work because she wants to do yoga. That's so badass to me. And I think that was it's just such a wonderful reminder of how we should appropriately place our priorities because it unfortunately, and I think this happens with a lot of teachers just because of the nature of the profession, school and performance and evaluations and making everyone happy was always number one, and then like myself came last, or myself came like second to last, and then family, friends, and external relationships came at the bottom, and that ended up having to be my downfall. I think that, I mean, I was going to leave teaching no matter what because of a variety of circumstances, but I always wish that I was able to adopt the mentality of not of caring less, in that I wasn't investing my whole existence into teaching. I think there probably would have been so much liberation in caring less about performance and what everybody else thought.
Yeah. You know, there was one time early on that I was evaluated, and I know for a fact that I did the same lesson as this other teacher. And I know that I'm a good teacher, and I know that the kids learned. I know they did. And in fact, we had similar pass rates. That teacher and I, like statistically, my numbers were there. And emotionally, like my relationships were there with my students. Long story short, she got a better evaluation than I did. And from that moment on, I thought, fuck this. I am not even going to fucking try anymore. I'm going to wing every evaluation. I'm not planning for it. I'm going to do what I do, come in any period, anytime. I don't care. And grade me, because I know that there's lessons being learned. Yeah. I always put the kids first. I sucked at paperwork. I don't care about evaluations. Even if I lost money on that, I didn't care because it wasn't worth my time. Or not even my time. It wasn't worth my energy. Right. Because it seemed like a waste of time. Like you put all this hard work into it, and yet it just seems silly to me. So I'm thankful for that lesson that I learned pretty early on, to just kind of be like, it's about the kids. You know, yeah, I didn't really feel that way towards the end, that like I had to live up to this thing. And also though, I never got any, like, I never got teacher of the month or anything. Like none of that ever happened for me. Like teacher of the year, whatever, it didn't happen. And I know why, because I didn't do that work. I just showed up for the kids. That's what I did every day.
It's so unfortunate. I'm glad that you had that experience too. And I bet once you just didn't care and did everything on the fly, everything probably fell into place. I mean, that's how you would imagine it would go.
Maybe.
I would imagine that you were in more of a flow state when teachers came in.
Yeah, I really figured it out. Like I figured out the routine for the kids, the way to like assign them their essays, but use class time to grade it because they were doing some other group. Like I figured out how to do that and make time for my family.
And it's so, and this is just a broken record, so unfortunate that our value as teachers is based not only on like one or two observations, but even within the observation, it's based in how we are teaching, which makes, or what we are teaching, not even how really, what we are teaching and how we're delivering it, which I know is important, but it's not I just wish our value as teachers was a little bit more based on the relationships that we're building with the kids, because at the end of the day, when our kids are in the real world, it's not about the stupid lessons that we taught them about the comma. It's going to be about how we modeled handling mistakes and failures, or how we dealt with students that were disrespectful for us, or how we showed students how to build relationships with people that were different from them, how we held their hand during their hardest times. Because, I mean, you can have teachers all day who put on a show for one day about, or you can have teachers all day who, yeah, will put on a show with very specific standards aligned lessons that they had been working on for weeks, and then their kids aren't learning anything because there's no passion there coming from the teacher the rest of the days of the year. And there's no learning going on because that teacher is very clearly not invested emotionally in the students or in their work. I just
Yeah.
kind of went on a
And you know,
soapbox for
like,
a second.
no, and I always felt like it was hard to plan as a teacher. It's like, how am I supposed to plan for the computer not working, or the fire drill, or the kid telling me to fuck
Oh my
off,
gosh.
or the meltdown that happened, or how about when Parkland happened and we spent 2 or 3 straight days just fielding that,
Yeah.
right? Like, when, those types of things, and I always made time for that. Like, in my Holocaust class, I never gave them one test, not one. Never. I think maybe if I was like, if they were in trouble or something, I was like, you guys are not listening. Here's a 30-question multiple choice test that I would like pull up from Google or something. Because I didn't make them.
Nice.
Because for me, like, Holocaust education was so not about like, when did Hitler invade? Like,
Right.
that was not. It was like, can we have honest conversations about what we're learning and what this means for our future? Like, like when we were teaching and we had a Charlottesville Nazi rally or wherever that
Oh
was,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying? And I'm teaching a Holocaust
Yeah.
class. It's like, I'm not going to ignore the elephant in the room that there was a Nazi
Right.
rally in South Carolina. So I would hold space for them to discuss that. That to me was the magic. And there's no rubric on evaluations for that. There's no standard for that.
So you're teaching at FLVS, you're doing virtual school. It's been a complete like 180 in terms of experience. I know that you love it, but you're also, well, love it more.
It's different.
Okay, okay. You are enjoying your kids.
I do.
Okay.
Every time I hang up with them, I ask, like, if you ask my husband or my kids, I hang up the phone. I'm like, oh, they're so cute. They're so cute. Sometimes I'm like, what? But for the most part, they're so cute.
But you are doing something else.
I think I'm
Oh,
still
do we not know yet? I thought, well, okay.
No, oh no, I don't know. So I'm waiting for my scores to come back. So I took the
Okay.
LSATs.
So that's the plan. The plan is to go to law school. And that's the dream. That's always been the dream.
It's always been the dream. I go back and forth. Sometimes I think, I don't know what I think. I'm going to wait to see what my test scores are. I'm going to apply. I'm going to see if I get in. I have my heart set on one school. It's the only online school in America that's accredited by the bar. I love convenience. I don't know how I feel about driving down to Miami 3 days a week. So
Where would that be?
working a full
Barry?
job. No, Nova or FIU.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. FIU has a law program?
Do. It's actually pretty decent.
Okay. One of my friends went to FIU undergrad, but then he went to Harvard Law School. So that's why I didn't realize.
You never know, Susie. Maybe my test score will come back.
You never know. Elle Woods did it.
Elle Woods.
So do you, at this point, we're waiting to see, how did you feel about it?
I felt better than the first time. Yeah, I felt okay. It's a really hard test. It's like one of those tests you leave, you're like, I have no clue. But my mental state was a lot better.
Okay.
Like, I was way more focused the second time. I was way more aware of when I wasn't focused and wasting less time on not knowing that I'm not focused. And like, does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
like sometimes you could be like in a story for 30 seconds, then you finally realize, but it was only like 5 seconds that I was in a story.
Well, regardless of what happens, I think, and I think a lot of other people would generally think, it's very bold to, at 38 years old, completely pivot from a career that you've been in since you were in your 20s. After you have,
Yeah.
while you have a full-time job that you need to maintain, while you're setting yourself up for this second career, and while raising a family. So, and I think that's really admirable. I think I'll share my thoughts in a second, but what was that like, making that decision in the midst of all of this? Like, where is your guiding light? What is bringing you through to this?
So this is kind of crazy. I had a personal experience over the last year. Not a personal, my family member did. So
Yeah.
you kind of know some of this. My brother was in a situation and got in trouble for something. Um, it ended up going to a jury trial. It was a crazy experience for me to be a part of. And I said to him in the middle of it, I was like, oh, so I actually applied for this other job when this was all going on last year. I applied to write curriculum for the Holocaust for FLVS. And I said to my brother, I said, if I get this job, then I'm going to hold off on law school. I'm going to like take that as a sign that like, okay, this is a good next step out of the classroom even more. And then if I don't get the job, I'm going to law school. I'm going to apply. And I didn't get the job. So it's
Okay.
like, okay, universe, I hear
Yeah.
you. Because I feel like I came pretty close, and so that's kind of what it was. I had this personal experience. I learned so much with everything going on with my brother. And I'm smart enough to do it. That's kind of was my guiding light. I'm like, I can do this, like I'm smart enough. I'm a hard worker. I like school. I always told myself I'd never go back to university, but
The world has a funny way. Did
here I am.
having your girls and knowing that you would have to juggle school and a full-time job ever deter you, or were you just full speed ahead once you made that
Well, I'm still
decision?
like, I can still be deterred. Like, there's nothing set in
Okay.
stone. So that kind of
Okay.
scares me a little bit. I love that my girls are watching me make this move. In some ways, I feel a little negligent. Like there's times when I have stayed so focused on myself, the yoga trainings, working a million jobs, now going to law school. There's definitely time that I take away from them. And I think that that is an issue. I'm not negating that. And I also think that it's really cool for them to see their mom as a go-getter, as like someone who's not just going to do something because that's how I identify or that's my role. I'm a teacher. That's what I did. That's what I chose. Like, it's just never too late, So, and even if, let's just say my score comes back, it's not very good. Let's just say I don't get into law school. I think it's good for them to see that too,
Yeah.
that I tried and, to see how that rejection will land on me and knowing that they're watching. And no matter what happens, I think that it's been a really nice lesson for them to see me try. I studied so hard for the LSAT. They would constantly see me with those books open, 5 a.m. whenever I could on the couch,
Okay.
like whenever, just cracking open a practice test. I think it was good for them. I think it is good for them. I don't know if they can see that now.
Maybe no, probably not.
They don't see that. They see mom's not here.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Of course. And nothing's going to make that less tough. And the way that I see it as an outsider is you one, we know that there's so much value in showing and modeling for your girls that just because you've done something for a long time and that was like the trajectory for you at a time doesn't keep you locked in place if that's not where your passion is. There's always it's always possible to stop anything or leave or just say no, whether it's a career or a meeting or a phone call or an interaction. It's always okay to just not let yourself be constrained by societal expectations. And I think that's beautiful that you're showing them that. And also, it's almost like you have to choose what lesson you want to teach your girls right now, because you can't be a 1000% present mother that you want to be and also show them the value in making a life decision like this. So,
Mhm.
while of course it's so hard and heartbreaking to feel the guilt of not being with your girls, to choose something for yourself, it's also important to show them why that matters. Did that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't even know if I feel that guilty.
Oh, well, good.
I feel more like, what kind of issues will this bring up for them in the future? And then maybe I'll feel guilty. But I don't know. They're at like a weird age too. They're 12 and going to be 10. Um, you know, so I'm ready. If it all goes as
Yeah.
planned, I hate that word. Kennedy will be graduating high school at the same time I graduate law school.
Badass.
I know. Isn't that
Yeah,
cute?
that's so cute.
I know. So, and she could take that either way. Like, of course, stealing
Well,
my
yeah.
thunder.
Is she that type though?
I don't know. I
Okay.
think there's a little bit of both in her. No, I don't think so. She's cool. Like she'd be really excited to celebrate that together.
So, moving back to you being a parent, were you just parenting like by the seat of your pants?
My Well, no. Okay, so I was really young when I had Kennedy. My mom was around, even like lived with us, I feel like in the beginning. Um she lived with us at one point. My second daughter, Sloan, was born sick. So my mom definitely moved in when Sloan was born. Um yeah, I did parent a little bit, just like, I don't know. I listened to my mom. I went with her advice. A lot of my friends later on, because I was the first one, I actually had one friend too that had a baby at the same time as me. And we went to high school together. We kind of fell off, but we rekindled when we realized we both had a baby and we were really the only ones. And I learned a lot from her also. So I had that one friend and I had my mom. But for the most part, yeah, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And it was like, we were so young, like meaning me and my friends, and Kennedy was just kind of like our buddy. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't lose any of my friends. You know how some women
No.
experience that they lose some
Yeah.
friends? My friends kind of clung to it. Like, my best friend Lucy came over every day on her lunch break to be with Kennedy, Like, they really actually were more drawn in, I feel like, when I had Ken. And she had like all these built-in aunts and uncles and stuff.
That's so beautiful. That's so
Yeah.
nice to have a kid where you feel like they're being raised in a village, like the good old days.
Oh yeah. Village. It's such a village. She's like, I just told this to her. She struggles a little bit with friends at school. I was like, it's because you were just one of the adults. Like,
Yeah.
she is so much more socially with it with adults than with kids her age. She didn't have really anybody until my second was born. And then now there's kids everywhere. They're just like contagious or something. They're just everywhere. And yeah, my thing with parenting is radical honesty. That's my thing.
I
It's scary.
oh, I'm sure. I've always admired you as a parent because I think I started talking to you about being a parent right around the time when I was starting to think about trying to get pregnant. And one, you made it so exciting. I was so scared. But you were like, I'm obsessed with my girls. They're so cool. And I hadn't really ever heard a parent talk about their kids as being so cool. Like, I think my kid's badass. and you would tell me stories. I think, what did Kennedy go to school with the Michelle Obama book? And she was like lecturing people. There was some story like that.
That is so funny.
You
I don't
recall?
remember
No,
that.
it was it was so
Me?
funny. And I was like, what kind of mom raises a kid like that? And it has to be a mom that is just completely parenting through her personality. You are parenting according to yourself. I mean, it seems like from the outside looking in, it doesn't seem like when I was near the end of pregnancy, I made the decision to not read a single parenting book because I knew that if I got too much information about different parenting styles, I would just freeze out with anxiety because nothing's right and everything's wrong. And
Yeah. Or
so
everything's wrong. Nothing's right.
I just decided to parent according to myself and my few trusted friends that were also parents. And I think that it can be hard to do that. I mean, I'm not even really parenting yet, so I don't know. I'm just keeping a human alive. But it seems like it can be very hard to do that, to parent without letting the noise come in, especially with all of our easy access to social media and people making comments on the way that we parent and from what they see. And so, one, it seems like, and what I really admired was that you were just parenting according to your personality, and it didn't seem like you were changing who you were just because you became a parent and you were a mom. You were like Jaci and mom. You were Jaci enhanced. You weren't Jaci and then Jaci mom. You know what I mean? And I really like what you said about radical honesty because there's also so much pressure for parents to be perfect. And I think that I learned a lot of this as a teacher. There was a lot of pressure for teachers to be perfect in front of kids. But what I really found and made the decision to do early on was find the value in being radically honest and being okay with making mistakes and failing and apologizing and repairing, because all of the learning within relationships comes from the repair, comes from making a mistake, hurting someone else, and then coming back and fixing it.
Yeah.
So I like
Yeah.
what you said about radical honesty.
Yeah. It's hard now, the middle schooler, like the question she asks me, and I'm like, okay, let's not tell dad that you asked me this.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. But it's like I'd rather her learn it from
Yes.
me than someone else. Yeah, that's been wild.
My mom was always like that. I super duper value that as an adult. I knew my friends' moms were not like that, but I always knew that I could ask her the most inappropriate or awkward or embarrassing questions, and she would take the time to answer honestly and as developmentally appropriate as possible. And I so value that because I always felt safe with her. I always what made very mature, informed decisions because I had that foundation and I had a source of information that wasn't intimidating or false, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Um Sometimes it's hard to be age appropriate when it's like, well, that's just the way it is, you know? It's like that's where my radical honesty comes in. Like when she asked me this sexually based question the other day, and then she goes, well, do you do
Oh
that?
no. Oh no. Okay.
Oh, so like that, it's like, and her friend was over. Like it was
No.
a normal conversation. But you know what? Like that's the kind of stuff that it's like, well, first of all, none of your business. And
Yeah.
second of all, this is not about me. Like I gave you the facts of the answer. All right?
That's a good in the moment decision.
Yeah, yeah. So radical honesty. Now, I will say this. Kennedy takes it better than Sloan Sloan is very sensitive. And it's to the point that sometimes I think Sloan doesn't ask the questions because she's so sensitive. And maybe that's part of the backfiring of my radical honesty, because it is tough for me to soften sometimes, that she doesn't come to me and ask me these questions, or she's just so clueless and she's such a kid still.
Yeah.
She's very different from Kennedy. Kennedy's always been really mature. Sloan is like not there yet. So sometimes I worry about Sloan, that she won't ask the questions because she needs a softer answer. So I have to practice that.
Does Kennedy serve as a bridge in that regard at any point? Like, do you think they have a relationship where Sloan would feel safe asking her those questions and kind of getting the secondhand answers from you?
It's a good question. I don't really know if I've ever witnessed that. I know that Kennedy will embrace Sloan. I just don't know if Sloan will even open up to Kennedy. Yeah.
That must be wild to watch your kids, period. Watch them develop personalities and watch them be so radically different and then have to change. I sometimes think about what it would be like to have a second kid and how hard it would be to rely on everything I knew parenting Hawthorne and then have to be faced with completely changing it all because I have a different kid, obviously.
Right. Even for me, the first 6 weeks, Sloan was in NICU. So I didn't even have the 6 weeks at home. So anything I did with Kennedy was out the door. And then when she came home, you still kind of live that NICU routine. So like it was to the point where the doctors were like, okay, you don't have to take her temperature every 3 hours. And I was like, oh, okay, but that's what you did in the NICU. And so, yeah, they're just completely different. And, yeah, they're completely different.
Can we go back to your yoga? Because I want to know who influenced you in terms of yoga? How did you find yoga?
Okay, so I've always yoga was always something that I was interested in, even at a young age. But I really started practicing, I would say, in 2010, right after I had Kennedy. And there was this really great yoga teacher at Lifetime Fitness, and he was like really traditional, and I loved him. He was so cool. His name was Troy. And then I found my teacher, Leslie, in the park, in a public park, and she's teaching this public class. And I just really loved it. Like being outside and doing yoga was really cool for me. And then I had this one experience on my mat. I know this sounds so stupid, but it was real at the time. And I was in such turmoil, honestly, over the political scene, over what was happening, 5 years ago. Just like it like uprooted me. I couldn't even like get my shit together. I was so mad about what was happening. So I was on my my mat one day, and this like emotional release came over me. Like I started crying, and I was like, I felt like a really big surrender that I was really needing, like to root back down, like to feel myself like melt kind of into the ground. And that right after that, I was hooked. That's probably when I started skipping Fridays at
school. Well, first of all, I don't think that sounds stupid. I think that at least I found in my life the times where my life was in the most upheaval was also the time where I was most connected, period. Mm-hmm. I was more ready to see, period, and receive. I was more energetically sensitive. That sounds so dumb, but I was more in touch. I was seeing those things and I was seeking those things. So I don't think that sounds stupid. You did say when you found your teacher, Leslie, and you put an emphasis on teacher. So when Leslie's not just a friend, she's not just someone whose yoga class you go to. She's more than that. So what does it mean, teacher? What role does that play?
Okay. So the studio that I found actually, so Leslie was first my teacher. Now she's my friend. I mean, we have yoga can bring people so close together. Like you don't even have to say anything, and it's like you just are one, you're a union,
Yeah.
And so I remember my first training with Leslie, and it was a 200-hour yoga training. I didn't know shit. I was like all about the energetic part of yoga. I fucking hate science.
Oh.
I hate math. Anatomy. I mean, I don't even think I ever took anatomy in high school. I didn't even make it that far. Like, they didn't even want me in anatomy, Like, so learning the anatomy, I was so taken back by Leslie. I was like, oh my God, she's a scientist. She's like, amazing. Like she knows so much about the human body and how it fits in energetically, whatever. So at first the teaching started out as like an actually academic teaching. And then the more that I got to know her and her humanity, and I feel like that's just like, we started off with that word, and that's like the word I want to come back to. It's like seeing her as a human and not as this like superior teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Is what really started making her become a special kind of teacher to me. Like seeing her and her humanity has taught me more than the academic shit with anatomy and the body, and then the studio itself, like I said, they do this like book club, and all these women, Susie, they come in and they're older than me and they have these life experiences. The wisdom that they share is like, it has changed my life being with those women, just through them sharing their humanity.
So
that has been my best teaching. Like that is what has taught me the most.
Not just Leslie, not just the physical yoga, but the community that comes around yoga.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she's also someone that you have not only depended on educationally for when you were becoming a yoga teacher yourself, but she sounds like she's someone also who you just have to lean on to as you are learning and practicing your own yoga, right? Is that what you mean by teacher? She's
yeah.
like she's also like a guide. Is she like she's guiding you through your own yogic practice journey as much as someone else can other than yourself?
I think this is the best way to put it. Like when you see someone that you look up to so much, right? Like how I look up to Leslie. And then when you really get to know them, right? Outside of the teacher role, but as a friend role, she became even more of a teacher for me.
That's beautiful.
If that makes any sense.
And I bet you said that's when you really became hooked to yoga. So beforehand, was it kind of just like a loose relationship? You would get on your mat when you wanted to or when you had time, and this is when you committed?
No, that's a good question. So I always was committed to my yoga practice. I would go every, whatever it was, Tuesday, Thursday with my best friend. And we would go to the Lifetime Yoga and then go to the steam room. And it was like a whole thing. It was like, no one's taking our Tuesday, Thursdays away from us, So there was definitely like, I was hooked then. I think what got me in with that moment on my mat at the park that day was that I learned that it's so much more than just a physical practice. It's therapy.
So that's when you like became emotionally connected to yoga.
Yeah. Like almost it's kind of fucked up, like almost dependent.
Okay. I think that's beautiful. I've been going on walks every night. I'm addicted to those. Maybe that's what you experience. I started going on walks with Hawthorne after he was born in the evening and in the afternoon, and now they're kicked back to the evening, and it's like 3.5 miles in the evening time. I take the same route. I listen to a little podcast. It's at sunset. I see the same people. I wave at the same babies. I wave at the same dogs. And I feel so good when I go out to my walk and so good when I come back and so sad when I have to miss it. And maybe I
Yeah.
shouldn't put pressure on myself to be committed to the yoga, or pressure around guilt around not being able to commit to it, because it seems like everybody else I know that does yoga is committed to it, and I do love it. And I that's something for me to explore separately.
Yeah. I have a good recommendation for a teacher for you. When she comes, gets you feeling into your body, gets you moving, gets your brain, there's so many ways is amazing, right? Like we should move every day. I don't practice asana every day. I
That's
practice a lot.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good.
I'm on my mat probably 4 to 5 times a week, but I don't. There's some days that I miss. Like today I didn't get on my mat. I have my niece now. There's Wednesdays and
Right.
Thursdays, so like if I want to get on my mat, I have to wake up really early, which I should. But there is just something so special about my mat. But I also do have a love-hate relationship with yoga as well. I think, yeah, I do have a love-hate relationship with it.
That's comforting. To know that someone like you also experiences stuff like that. Well, I know that we're running out of time. I do have 5 questions that I didn't tell you about that I just want to ask you for fun off the cuff.
Okay.
So you couldn't prepare for them. And I make them different for every guest. What? What?
I don't prepare for anything.
Oh.
I looked at I said, "Oh, these are easy questions. I can do this. No big deal."
Even better. You'll be a pro. Okay. Favorite political figure?
Fuck. Can you ask me that one next? Do the next one.
What time do you wake up when you have no plans?
7.
I'm just curious. Are you like an early person or a late person?
I'm early.
Yeah.
Like 7.
If you could live in any time period in history anywhere in the world, where and what time would it be?
Oh, I would live in the 1850s.
What was that? The Industrial Revolution?
That was like right before the Civil War.
Okay.
And I always said to my students that if I lived in the 1850s, I would be like murdering slaveholders with John Brown, who was like that crazy guy that like killed a bunch of slave owners.
That's badass. I knew I would get a good answer.
That's what I would have done. For now, that's my answer.
Okay. Ideal pizza order.
Oh, okay. So my husband had a pizzeria for a little bit. I don't know if you ever got to go.
I didn't.
We don't have it. All right. I will miss this forever. It was called the Yo Rita. It was a margarita pizza, just like a white pizza with fresh tomatoes and basil. And they had this, it was a slice shop. So they had this perfect little slice oven. When that piece of pizza came out of the slice oven, and like I would go see him on my lunch. Well, I was working at FLVS. So I'd go see him for lunch, and like, that's my pizza, the Yo Rita, but it's like specifically from the Pie House.
But
I would do anything for the Yo Rita.
You can't still get it because he's your husband?
You know what it is? No, because we shut it down. It wasn't even, I could make the Yo Rita. I can't get the same crisp without that.
Damn it.
The oven.
That's a secret. What is your favorite attribute about yourself?
I would say my willingness to like, let me come back to that one.
Okay.
Are we on to the political one?
Favorite political.
I don't freaking know.
Okay,
I hate them all right now.
It doesn't have to be right now.
I know, but even in the past, as a history teacher, you're like, fuck this guy and fuck that guy too.
Well, wasn't Eleanor Roosevelt pretty dope?
Yeah, but she could have been doper,
okay.
There's things that were messed up too. I know as a history teacher, I should be able to pick this.
Well, now that I'm realizing it, that was probably the wrong question because you know all the good and all the bad.
I just know so much of the bad. It's so annoying. Sometimes I wish I didn't know all the bad, but I guess ignorance is bliss.
Yes, it is.
I guess my favorite. Okay, let's go back to the attribute.
If you want me to just that
Or
one
you know
is
what?
out, it's okay.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna say this. I feel like something that I feel really strongly about is my confidence, honestly. Like I do feel confident. Even as a kid, there were ways that I acted out that would suggest otherwise. But at the end of the day, I did get a confidence, and I feel like that came from my mom's mom. I don't know, this like I am who I am, you know, take it or leave it. That's something. Like I definitely am myself.
Yeah.
Like I'm unapologetically
Yeah.
myself. I really don't put on a front for anyone.
You are.
So maybe that's it.
That's great. And that's something that people can pick up on immediately with you, which I think
Yeah.
is beautiful and very positively impactful on the people that you come into
Yeah.
contact with.
Yeah, maybe it's not a confidence, but it's an
Mhm.
assurance of who I am.
Do you want to skip political figure?
I'm still trying to think, you know? And oh, okay, I'll go with John Brown, the guy who
Oh,
owned
okay.
slaves.
So he just went around killing slave owners.
We'll call him a political figure. I mean, I guess he wasn't
Well,
really,
I
but
mean,
more
then
like
we could go into the definition of what is a political figure, which can encompass so many things in people and actions.
listen, he's still in the history books. He shapes
Hey,
politics. So we'll
that's
take
all it
it.
takes. Well, thank you so
John Brown.
much. Oh,
No.
I didn't want
I'm
to
good.
cut you off.
Okay, I'll share one
Okay.
thing. I'll share one thing. So I used to have my kids at the end of the year because I don't do tests if I don't have to. So they would have to paint a picture or draw a picture, and I would create this really cool art gallery on the wall of like political figures. And this one girl did John Brown. She pencil sketched him. Yeah, I still have it. I took some of the good ones with me when I left.
I have a couple. I'm glad I took some of my kids' art. Anyway,
No.
thank you so much for joining me, Jackie. This was fun,
Oh my God,
obviously.
it's so much fun. I had
I
so much
knew it
fun.
would be. I know you had a chaotic, busy day. I also had like a surprisingly busy day. I had a surprise meeting I found out about 11 minutes before, and then I was just on back to back meetings for like 5 hours. So this was really good. I was feeling really overwhelmed, but I knew that sitting and talking with you would ground me.
And I'm super proud of you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, I am. I think it's really amazing that you just do what you do. You know, you take the chance and you put yourself out there. And I think it's really cool.
I'm figuring
I
it,
don't have the balls to do
I'm figuring it out as I go. I'm trying to find comfort in the discomfort.
it. Yeah. Come to one of my yoga
I know I have
classes.
to. I know I have
Okay.
to. Okay.
All right.
Have a great night with your kiddos.
Thank
Bye,
you. Bye.
Jackie.
You